When we get in the door, we're just happy to be here. But at a certain point, you're just grabbing it, signing the contract. If you have contracts, shaking the hand, taking whatever money they give you, if they give you any money, and you're like, yes, I'm just happy to be here. At a certain point, though, your vocation, your career has to become a business. Hi, my name is Damon Brown with DamonBrown.net. My main thing is helping you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, or also a non-traditional entrepreneur. Today we're going to talk about money, specifically why you should absolutely raise your price this year, like right now, not later, right now, as we're going into the new year, which is when I'm recording this. And even if you're watching this later on in the year, it's not too late. You absolutely should be raising your prices. It might be a couple pennies, a couple lira, whatever, wherever you're rocking with me all around the world. Thank you for the love and support all around the world, by the way. Whatever your currency is, raise it. Because yesterday's price should not be today's price. I'm going to explain why and why it's so important that you do it right now. Like right now. Again, it's the Bring Your Worth show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I give you hopefully the best of what you need to be your best non-traditional entrepreneur, side hustler, solopreneur, etc. If you're digging the show, yeah, I said dig. I'm showing my age. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to subscribe. It's always free at youtube.com/BrownDamon. I come to y'all live on Wednesdays as well. All right, let's get into it. You absolutely need to raise your price. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Word to Fat Joe. This is so important. When we get in the door, we're just happy to be here. I've been a full-time freelancer, consultant, running my own business for decades now. And I remember first coming in the door and you're like, oh my God, they like me. They really like me. Word to Sally Fields, right? They like me. They really like me. But at a certain point, you're just grabbing it, signing the contract. If you have contracts, shaking the hand, taking whatever money they give you, if they give you any money, and you're like, yes, I'm just happy to be here. At a certain point, though, your vocation, your career has to become a business. And as you get further into the game, you realize that you actually have something to offer. As I talk about in my Bring Your Worth keynote, it's actually available. I'll throw the link somewhere up here. But I'll be doing the keynote on the road later on this year in 2022, so you can catch me on the road too. Be sure to go to DamonBrown.net to see the latest dates. As I talk about these companies, these organizations, whomever is hiring you, they can't function without you. We are the people that bring the content, because I'm a journalist. We're the people that bring the content. We're the people that do the service. We're the people that are getting hired for these things. If we weren't getting hired for these things, if we didn't bring value, then we wouldn't be hired. It's not an altruistic thing. So you absolutely need to be raising your price. Beginning of the year is the best time to do it, but I've done it in mid-year too. Here are the reasons why. Number one, if you're keeping your prices low out of fear, which I'm gonna keep it real with you, a lot of us do it because of fear, because we're afraid people aren't gonna pay more. It becomes what Seth Godin calls a race to the bottom. If I have a service and I'm charging $1 for it, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna compete with Damon, so I'm going to charge 55 cents. There's two ways I can react to that. The first way is for me to up my level of service or give some type of added value so that you keep coming to me, right? And we'll get into that in the next point. The other way to do it, which is the race to the bottom, is for me to drop my prices to 50 cents, right? No Curtis Jackson. And then what's gonna happen? You're gonna be like, oh, well, let me drop mine to 45 cents. At a certain point, your cost, what we would call overhead, the amount of money it takes for you to run your business, the business of the business, which we'll also get into, that will start outstripping the amount of profit you get. And those profit margins, as they're called, will become really, really small. In fact, you might start losing money. But you're so worried about what I'm doing, what somebody else is doing, that you're competing on price. That becomes a race to the bottom. Again, as Seth Godin says, shout out to him. So if you're in a race to the bottom, you're gonna be at the bottom of the barrel. And then next year, you're probably not gonna be here because you're not gonna be able to actually function as a business. So number one, if you're just competing on price, it's a race to the bottom. Are you going to be, as I talk about in my new book, Career Remix, are you going to be McDonald's or are you going to be French Laundry, which is a very fancy restaurant up in the Bay Area? What are you trying to do? If I have a specific moment I want to have, or my friends do, whatever, and we happen to have the money, we're doing French Laundry. McDonald's is, we're on the road and my kids are hungry and they're really getting on my nerves. I need to give them some nuggets. What are you trying to do, right? That's the race to the bottom. And at a certain scale, shout out to Amazon, shout out to McDonald's, shout out to Walmart. At a certain scale, these bigger businesses are going to squash you on price anyway. You gotta give something else. Amazon, Walmart, I could do a whole video on just one of them. The amount of businesses they squashed out because of price. So your main advantage cannot be price, particularly in this environment. Number two, especially right now with the new year, you have to keep in mind of the cost of living. Right now, it's 2022 when I'm recording this. We're about 2 years, about to go into the third year of this pandemic. The reason why I bring this up, because I try to keep my stuff evergreen, so I think it'll still be relevant when you watch this. The reason why I bring this up is that interest rates are crazy. So right here in America, we're looking at 7-8% interest rates, even higher, which means that if you have $100 in 2021, then it's worth about $93 this year, roughly. What's it gonna be next year? Did you raise your price 7%? I did. I raised my price more than that. But I always raise my price every single year. And it not only reflects what's called COLA, which is the cost of living average. You can correct me on that in the comments if you, for you economists. I can't even say it. I'm definitely not an economist. For you economists out there, but it's called COLA. Basically, it's the cost of living here in America. That cost of living thing, shout out to my grandmother whose picture is right above me. In her day, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, when she was starting a family, she would think the prices today would be insane. That's the cost of living. It gets higher and higher. Part of that's part of inflation, and part of it is the circumstance of just business, which again, economists can get much deeper into that than I can. The point is you need to factor that into the work that you do, particularly if you're independent. Again, I own several businesses. I did a couple startups and I'm selling one of them. So I'm used to doing things on my own. If you have a traditional job, you can go in and say, hey, I'd like to get a raise. Or they might even say, hey, here's a extra 3% to reflect the cost of living, which you might have heard depending on the business that you've had or that you've worked at. If you're independent though, nobody's gonna do that for you. You have to pay your own taxes. Like, no one's coming to save you. So you have to build that COLA in. And I bring up the pandemic because it's a much longer story with the amount of money that's been printed and the amount of services that we've had to do and the compensation we've had to do for people who are having a really tough time right now. The inflation for America is approaching double digits, which means that you need to raise your price. But this was important before the pandemic. I was raising my price way before the pandemic. Now, again, if you're charging somebody $100 last year, they give you $100 this year, that $100 has $93 worth of spending power. Imagine what it might be like next year. That's always happening. It's just really obvious now. Number three, you have to give yourself a raise. This sounds crazy. Even if your business is doing rough, which I've had in my years, I've been in the game for a little while. You got my sympathy. I get it. You're like, how can I give myself a raise when I have like mothballs coming out of my wallet? Well, raising your price is part of doing that raise, right? But it's also the business of your business. Shout out to Terry McMullen, who I first heard this from, where we often think about if we run an ice cream shop, we'll think about the type of ice cream we want to have. We'll think about how we want to serve our customers and things of that nature. If we have an ice cream truck, then what kind of truck we're going to have. Like all fly stuff, like fantastic. That's great. But then again, as I brought up earlier, you have to take care of taxes. You have to hire your staff. You have to see if you're going to have a profitable business, not just this year, but over the next 5 years, at least the next 5 years. What's your game plan? Are you going to expand to more trucks? If you end up having more demand, are you going to have more staff, or will you get a brick and mortar stuff? Like, it can keep going and going. One of these things, which Tara McMillan talks about so well in her podcast about what works, is that we often forget that we actually hired ourselves. I am founder of Cuddler, which is a company I sold, of So Quotable. I'm founder of my private coaching. Private coaching. I'm blanking on the word. It's private and it's coaching. You can go to DamonBrown.net to learn more about it. But I'm in charge of that company. Let's call it a company. My company with that and all these things. I'm even CEO of an executive producer of this show. If I was doing this in a traditional environment, then I would hire someone to be CEO. I would hire someone to be COO, hire someone to be VP, even hire someone to be an executive assistant or an administrative assistant. But I'm hiring myself. So am I paying myself? It's not saying that you have to empty out the coffers and give yourself a raise and say, I'm going to go ahead and spend this money because I deserve it. It's to realize that you are the founder of whatever stuff you're doing, and you're also the CEO. The founders hire the CEOs. You're hiring yourself. When the hell are you going to give yourself a raise? Lastly, and this is the most important thing, when you raise your price, and you should, I don't care if it's New Year or not, it forces you to add value. So many of my mentors, so many people that I appreciate have said this to me, where it's like, Damon, don't give a coupon. Don't drop your price. Don't do 2 for 1, unless it happens to be part of your environment. I've done a couple of those sales, but that should not be your trigger. That should not be the thing. Your thing should be, I'm going to do this price, but I'm going to give this value. So the best advice I got from a mentor of mine years ago was that if you're asking essentially for $10, then you should be giving 10x the value, $100. That is scalable, that's approachable to everything. If you're asking for this, you should be 10xing whatever it is. If you go to DamonBrown.net, my one-on-one private coaching, I give my best to it, and it is a premium. It is not cheap. But I guarantee people that work with me, your results will be 10x, financially or otherwise, to what you invest in our relationship. Same thing for my books. This book right now is $18. You're getting at least $180 out of this, minimum. I would even go higher, but let me relax. So if you're doing that approach, then it's easier to be confident and easier, frankly, to give yourself a raise. And that gives so much power and strength to the work that you do. So it could be New Year, which we're celebrating now. It could be the middle of the year. It could be your birthday. Raise your price once a year. Yesterday's price should absolutely not be today's price. And if you're uncomfortable with raising the price, think about how you're supposed to be adding value. That becomes an exercise in itself. If you're liking the content, feel free to subscribe at youtube.com/BrownDamon. It's always free. Bring Your Worth show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Much love to y'all. And remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care.